Welcome back to the Farmer Network podcast. As you know, we're raising money for the My Name's Doddie Foundation. Mark's hightailed it from the farmhouse down to the farm, and delighted that one of his old pals, one of his old rugby playing pals from Scotland Sevens is joining us now on our podcast. And we can only say huge thanks to Clark Laidlaw, all the way from New Zealand, currently the New Zealand Sevens coach. Thanks ever so much for joining us, Clark, and we're looking forward to having a chat with you.
Okay. It's only recording your voice, the Scruff. It's not recording your face.
So how's it going out there? Are you all right?
Yeah, we're all good. I guess New Zealand's always a little bubble, isn't it? You know, it's that far away, but I guess over the last year, it's felt like the ultimate bubble. Yeah. You know, with the COVID and how the rest of the world have had to deal with it compared with what we've experienced here. Bloody lucky, I guess, around their leadership and how quickly they acted. But certainly a bit isolated. You know, it feels a long way from home at the minute. But yeah, in general terms, we've been really lucky around the last year, and you know, we're living our lives as normal, apart from not being able to travel overseas.
Yeah, and are you? Where are you based? Where are you speaking from now? Are you speaking from your house, or?
Yeah, this is Gracie's room, because her room's closest to the Wi-Fi. So if you know New Zealand, that Wi-Fi and cell coverage can drop out pretty quickly. So this is my middle daughter's room, Mount Maunganui, Tauranga, in the Bay of Plenty. So it's a beautiful part of the world. We're just, I guess, heading into winter. There's been a lot of flooding in the South Island. A lot of the farm communities been getting hit pretty hard with flooding down there over the last couple of days. But up here on the East Coast, we had a few showers on Saturday. But yeah, it's a beautiful part of the world, East Coast of the North Island.
So I'll probably do a little introduction about you, so that the Farmer Network members can get a bit of a picture about who we're speaking to. For those of you that don't know, we're delighted to be joined by Clark Laidlaw, who's coming all the way from New Zealand. I think it's about 8 o'clock in the evening down there. It's different timing for us, but I got to know Clark playing for Jed Forest, which is one of the oldest and proudest border rugby clubs up in Scotland. Clark captained and coached the club, and he went on to be selected to play professionally for the Scottish Borders team, which he represented the team alongside the legend that is Doddie Weir. Subsequent to him playing for the Borders, Clark took up coaching, where he went back to his home club and coached Jed Forest, and then decided to take a punt and move over to New Zealand, where he ended up coaching some local sides and got picked up by the Wellington Hurricanes. His coaching went from strength to strength, and he bounced back over to the UK and coached London Irish in the Guinness Premiership, and then has recently taken on the role as the New Zealand Sevens coach. Interestingly, I think this is true, Clark, you're the only non-Kiwi to coach a national team ever in New Zealand. Is that right?
That's right.
That's so that's an impressive resume. And then just with the New Zealand Sevens team, he's won the World Series, a World Cup, a Commonwealth Games gold, and now he's planning the New Zealand assault on the Tokyo Olympics, which we're all hoping, other than all the Japanese, it goes ahead this year. So welcome, Clark. It's fascinating to have you on. We haven't got as long as we'd want. It's probably a whole podcast chatting to yourself. But how are the Olympic preparations going with the All Black Sevens?
Yeah, good to jump on, and it's quite funny listening to Mark speaking about me. So we'll probably not get into a past history. Jed Forest Rugby Club, but no, I guess it's a little bit mixed. It's as you said it there, it feels a little bit different than it did, 18 months ago when we were preparing, where, pre-COVID, everybody was just excited around the opportunity to go and represent New Zealand, and life was normal. The last year has probably taught us that some things are more important than just sport, but I do think the Olympics are a great opportunity for the world, if it can go ahead safely, to be inspired again by sport, and be united around the world, around us all, trying to put on good performances. So yeah, our preparation's going good. It's a little bit difficult to understand exactly where we're at. We played Australia 2 weekends ago up in Auckland. They came across and we played six games against each other. So that gave us a little bit of a yardstick around where we think our game's at. But it's a little bit difficult. It feels like a bit like an 18-month pre-season getting ready for your first tournament. So I guess, I think we're in as good a place as we could be. Our men are training well and preparing well. So, we think we're in a good spot, but it does feel a little bit different to it maybe did 18 months ago.
Yeah, fantastic. And how did you get on against Australia anyway, or were the results not the thing that you were sort of looking at? Was it more the performance you were? I suppose you were looking at performance, but did you perform to the standard?
Yeah, New Zealand rugby, it's always about winning and losing, but it was certainly around the performance. There's areas of the game we've been trying to develop, and some of our younger players have been working hard to develop. When we've had no live tournaments, we got 6 wins out of 6 over the 3 days. But I think Australia will have seen enough to know that they troubled us. Certainly in the first 3 or 4 games, there was little moments in the game that swung it our way. The 4th game, we were 19-0 down at Eden Park. We played alongside a Super Rugby game, so that was a cool experience for some of our younger players to sort of battle back from 19-0 down and find a way to win that game. So all in all, it was really worthwhile. We played, as I say, there was some good and bad and some indifferent, and no serious injuries, which was pleasing as you head towards this last 8 weeks of preparation.
So I always remember playing with yourself, Clark, in the Sevens series, and these sort of build-up games or quick knock-ups before the main tournaments were something that we probably trialled back in the day. And what in particular, like Clark was just a young lad as I was, and we was playing for the Scotland Sevens for the first time down in Hong Kong, and our coach had managed to fit up a hit-up game against the All Blacks, and Rob Moffat had sort of said to us, "Well, we'll go easy, lads. We won't go too hard because we don't want any injuries, and the All Blacks are the best in the world, and we've just basically come here to learn. So just don't go too hard. Respect everything, and we'll go out onto the pitch." Within 2 minutes, Clark had thrown a rugby ball flat out into the face of the New Zealand captain, and there was an all-out brawl. So I think these hit-up games have got a lot more tension, and if you're a competitive person like yourself, Clark, I mean that's just gonna. That's something that you don't hold back, and I'm sure that's why you've pushed on in coaching as you did in the rugby. Have you got anything to ask Adam before I crack on and bore everybody with my voice?
The good part of that story was the next time I seen Craig the Goldie was playing for the Penguins in Hong Kong a couple of years later, and he was my roommate.
Did he have a slightly bent nose? Because I remember there was quite a lot of blood at the time.
I think it was maybe he threw the ball at my head, but we had a great day a couple of weeks ago. We had an alumni day where we invited back ex-players, management, and Craig was there. So we had a laugh around the times in Hong Kong. So it was great to see him.
I think maybe we won the fight, but New Zealand won the rugby that day, which was generally the case, wasn't it?
Yep.
Right, you got anything to add, Adam? No, he's gone off there.
I had myself on mute because the dogs were barking. That's how professional we are.
It's true farmer life. That's true farmer life.
I was just going to say that as well as building this fantastic coaching career, which we're all watching, Clark. It was just to set the scene as to your playing career in sevens in the World Series. According to the stats, you played 93 matches, 283 points, 17 tries and 99 conversions. That's they're amazing figures, actually. But I was just going to ask you, I mean, we all know Mark very well in the Farmer Network and for what he's doing in his farming career at the minute. Artisanal cheesemaker now these days. Who would have thought? Doing a great job. Have you got any recollections of playing with Mark? We've never actually seen him play. What was it like as a player?
Yeah, he was. Well, he was a hell of a rugby player. I don't want to embarrass him, but he was. You know, you talk about being competitive and the will to win. Then Mark had all the attributes you want in a Scottish rugby player. His ability to, you know, we didn't have many world-class players in our team, but over the years, Mark was certainly somebody that would have made a Great Britain side. You know, if there was Olympics back then, he'd have been one of the few of us that would have been able to push into that team. And you know, I probably remember more of the off-field antics, but I do remember one of the times we played Canada and Hong Kong. It's funny how Hong Kong always comes up, but again, Rob Moffat, we had the tactics of keeping the ball away from Canada because they were big and physical. So it was their kick. And I remember thinking, all right, we'll catch this kick, move them, get them chasing. And Mark caught the ball roughly about, I don't know, just outside the 22 and looked to pass, which was the game plan to get them moving, and decided to tuck it under one arm and run directly straight 15 metres into two Canadians and got absolutely smashed. But no, he was, you know, as I say, he was a halfback in 15s and being able to switch to playing hooker and sevens. Sort of with him and Davy Gray were the sort of mainstay of the forward pack alongside a few others. And, you know, he genuinely helped us compete on that world stage. You know, he's a bloody good rugby player. So, as I say, the off-field antics and the before the before the game chats where he told us we're going off to play Canada, and he said to us in the tunnel standing next to the Canadians, "Let's go hunt some moose." Is also a memory I would never forget. And the Canadians were getting reasonably fired up in the changing room and we were standing laughing. So I think that summed up, probably summed up all the rugby careers where we were fierce competitors. We genuinely thought we could compete on the World Series. You know, we made 6 out of 8 quarterfinals at that last year in 2016 before we sort of all finished playing together. And but we had a great ability to switch off and have fun in between that. And I think that's what I enjoy about sevens. You know, it's what I enjoy about club rugby. It's what I enjoy about sport and people is that fun side, being able to really, yeah, just enjoy it, doesn't it? You know, just because you're coaching All Black sevens or playing for, you know, Scotland sevens, having fun and enjoyment, making mates, doesn't change for me. I think that's probably why I still, you know, love being involved with the sport.
And so, Mark, same question to you, really. Playing with Clark, what are your recollections of playing with him?
Well, the key on-field recollection that I have is down in Wellington, which is interesting because it's a common theme that's running through Clark's sort of career as a rugby man. But we played against England in the not the Telstra Dome, that's Australia, in the Cape Tin in Wellington. And Clark pretty much single-handedly scored all the points against England to beat them that day. And the stadium had come dressed all in red. The New Zealand public had come out. It was a full stadium. And Clark scored in front of the South Stand and lifted his arms into a saltire position like that. When he scored the try, we all piled on top of him. And then after we'd rubbed his face in the dirt and told him a few obscenities of how good he was, we all looked up at the South Stand and there was 25,000 people copying Clark with the arms crossed like that, which is a defining moment, really. And, you know, the England rugby team, sevens team, were probably either the best or the second best in the world at the time. And for somebody to, you know, as the standoff and the playmaker and the tactician to pretty much single-handedly score all the points against what was the best sevens team in the world was a pretty phenomenal achievement from a young lad just out of the Scottish borders. which was, yeah, that was my sort of overriding memory. We played at 2 Commonwealth Games and a World Cup together. Had some great times off the pitch, but has those experiences, Clark, have obviously informed your coaching, because I suppose when you're coaching such naturally gifted players, it's about creating that environment for those guys to thrive in. And did your days off the field as well as on it with the Scotland Sevens, has that influenced how you're coaching now, or have you completely cut that away and gone totally professional?
No, it's I think all your experiences just as a guy shapes, you know, who you are and why you're here. You know, and I've had a lot of experiences in life in general, you know, leaving school at 16, becoming a mechanical engineer, working in a factory for 7 years, going and living in Italy, out of there to try and make it in rugby, playing at the Borders, all the way through to coaching at Taranaki in Wellington, London. So I think that gives you, you know, as a Scotsman, you're always competitive, you have good humility and usually a really high work ethic, you know, so those traits have certainly been embedded to me as a young fella living in Jed, growing up, you know, as I say, working in a factory for 7 years. It gives you a really good grounding of people and getting to know how to understand people and work with people. And that's coaching, you know, it doesn't matter if it's under nines or if it's, you know, the All Black Sevens team, as you say, with some of the best athletes in the world. It's about how you relate to them as people, how you show them, you know, you care, how you create an environment that they can express themselves and, you know, be vulnerable and play amazing rugby. So that's, you know, that's how I coach. That's been shaped, as you say, by a lot of different experiences through life. And, you know, I think it's really, again, it's given me an authenticity around how I coach. You know, as you say, we played in a time where you could get up to mischief off the field and, you know, nobody really cared too much if you had a few beers here and there. So, again, I think that gives you a real empathy around players getting stuff right and getting it wrong. You know, I'm never too hard on players when they get stuff wrong. If it's a first or a second time, you know, I think there needs to be an understanding that they're just young men, the same as we were, traveling the world and wanting to see the sights. So yeah, I genuinely think a lot of that's really shaped my coaching.
That's really interesting that you mentioned the sort of phrases like vulnerable and getting things wrong and stuff. And Adam's been very involved with the farmer network over here, with some guys being in vulnerable positions in the farming community here and needing that sort of support that you've built up in the All Black Sevens team for your young players. And Adam's trying to recreate that up here in Cumbria for the wider farming community. And yeah, Adam, what's your views on that? There's maybe things that we can learn as a farming community from top level sport.
Yeah, I think you're right. Never actually looked at it from that point of view, Mark, but certainly 10, even 5 years ago, admitting that something's not right and that you have a problem just didn't happen in the farming community. So if you ever asked a farmer how he was doing, I'm all right. And there was always that mask there. And I think one of the good things that has come out of the modern world at the moment is that somehow it's become a little bit more acceptable to be able to talk. And, you know, those phrases that we now see in the media, it's okay to talk, it's okay not to be okay. And I think that networking is so important, and whether that's farmers having a chat in the local auction mart or lads at the local rugby club, it's important to be able to say, I'm not feeling that great, and to let that out. And so I guess in that respect, whichever community you're part of and belong to, as long as those networks are there to get you through, because none of us go through life, do we, being A1 top of the tree the whole of the time, you know. All of us at some stage come up to that barrier where things aren't okay and we need a little bit of support. So whether it's farming or rugby, as long as there's somebody there to put an arm around your shoulder and push you on, that's what we need in future, isn't it?
Well, and I think it's important as leaders of farms or businesses or sports teams that you role model that. You know, you're the first to, you know, to show vulnerability or, you know, spend some time, because a lot of people might say, how are you going, or you all good, but they don't really spend the time to check if you are. So I'd love to see people create space in their working weeks, create space in their life to genuinely check in with each other. We've done a lot of that with the team and spent a lot of time on each individual around who they are and why they're here. So we get to understand each other, because everybody's got, as you say, tough times at different times in their lives. And if you want the best out of them, whether they're making cheese or an auction houses, having a relationship and a genuine relationship with them is bloody important. You know, it's makes it difficult at the minute when you're thinking about picking an Olympic team and leaving players out. But I'd far rather have it that way, that, you know, they always know that we're there to help them if they need help. So you're right, there's a lot of similarities between farmers and sportsmen. You know, rugby, the staunch, tough farmer versus the staunch, tough rugby player. It's quite similar traits. So you're right, it's good to see that, I guess, the modern world is starting to understand that we can help each other a bit more.
And moving on from that, I mean, we had our teammates basically back sort of 20 years ago. We had our teammates to have a few pints with, and that was our support network. Really, there wasn't really mobile phones or anything like that, so you just turn up at someone's house and have a few pints, which was always good. But I was, funnily enough, I was watching another podcast that Clark had been roped into talking about a wee while back, and the Kiwi presenter had described him as the best Scottish export to New Zealand since Sean Connery, which made me chuckle quite a lot. But,
I saw that, Mark, and just if anybody's interested, that's on YouTube on the All Blacks podcast channel, and it is a good listen to. I listened to a little bit of that before.
Maybe not the looks, but certainly the intensity. The Scotland thread, though, Clark. We were talking earlier on the podcast about a little bit about the Six Nations, and you'll have a slightly different perspective because you're watching it from the Southern Hemisphere in the sort of cradle of probably the greatest rugby nation in the world. So you know, you're looking at it from a slightly different perspective. We spoke about the Lions selection, and like famously, your cousin Greg had played for the British Lions in the last tour down there. What's your take on the selection in terms of the composition of the side? How do you think they're going to compete against this South African side, which is massive and very, very impressive? And yeah, just sort of take it away on your views on the Lions, please.
Yeah, well, it's like any Scotsman, Englishman, Irishman, Welshman. It's the highlight every 4 years, isn't it? It's what we all love watching, and you know, love picking our own teams and critiquing the one that actually gets picked. And I like the selection. I think there's a real good balance between experience and people that have been there and done it, but with a bit of a freshness to the younger generation. And you know, and guys like Simmons getting picked that's not playing for England, guys like that, shows that, you know, the Lions traditionally always had an uncapped player or a player that wasn't playing test match rugby that would play. So I like that. I think there's some real speed and some power to go with some brute force. It's going to be similar to the Olympics. It's going to be a different tour. You know, I guess I was here when the Lions toured down here. I was just back in New Zealand, and you know, it's like around that sea of red in Wellington or Auckland, and you know, it's a shame that that's not going to happen. But I genuinely think that both teams will be really inspired around putting on a performance in the games that, you know, that everybody can be really proud of, both sides. And I think, you know, Africa, obviously the current world champions, they've been a little bit starved of international rugby over the last wee while. So I think that gives the Lions an opportunity to be right in the mix. You know, I think if Africa had played 10 test matches since the World Cup and they were really settled and their Super Rugby teams have been playing and so on, it would have been a really difficult challenge. But I genuinely see the Lions having a really good opportunity if they can keep their best players injury free and get to that fifth week of the tour or whatever it is, that first test with all the best players available. Then I'm actually picking the Lions to win. 8 Scotsmen. My tip for anybody that likes to go to the bookmakers is, for the last 2 times that Scotland have had as many players, which was 83 and 89, what happened the year after?
I remember.
1984, Scotland won the Grand Slam. 1990, Scotland won the Grand Slam. So my prediction is Scotland are going to win the Grand Slam next year. So get your money on.
Of course, we all remember the 1990 with the famous David Saul walkout.
Yeah.
And what a game that was. That try by Tony Stanger. I remember it well. I was playing at Penrith in those days, and we'd had an early kickoff. We got nicely finished, and we were in the bar. It was a red hot day. Had nicely finished in the bar, and it was a long night, especially for those of our players who had Scottish connections. But yeah, great memories. Well, best of luck, and thanks for your prediction, Clark. We won't hold you to it, but we'll all be rooting for the guys and hoping that they can go out there and do the business. Certainly in South Africa, with the size of those guys that we see. I mean, for those of us, ordinary club players, it's you can't believe the size of those guys, and they're all the same.
Huge man. And I remember working with the Hurricanes and playing against South African teams for the first time, and standing on the field, and the guy Ray Lilo, he's played for Cardiff over the last few years, but I always remember these 2 huge locks came running out. And he looked at them. He's like, "They're effing big, eh?" And I was like, "Yeah, they're big, mate. We're going to smash them." He's like, "Yeah, we'll smash them." They're huge. They're huge humans. They're huge athletes and impressive athletes. But I do like the way the modern game is going a wee bit at the minute. It feels like there's a real intent to attack well, and you'll watch some of the club rugby in England at the minute. Some of the teams that are going to make the playoffs or have made the playoffs are the best attacking teams, yet they've still got physicality like Sale, and they're full Africans. They showed you on the weekend against Bristol how physical they can be. But I do think there's a real intent around the world to keep the game moving and keep that attacking momentum that's been there over the last sort of year or so, and hopefully the Lions, with Gregor coaching, he's going to have a good forward pack to gain possession well, and hopefully they can get a real attacking game going.
So you mentioned Gregor Townsend there, who you played with for the Scottish Borders team. You played against. But you also, in the same team, and earlier on in your career for Jed Forrest, you played against the big man Doddie Weir, whose charity we're trying to raise a bit of money for with this podcast. And just if you have any sort of memories, I mean, you would have been quite a young lad coming in to the Borders team at the time. There's always rivalry. It's like a Spatria and Wigton with Melrose and Jed Forrest, and you'd have been at each other's throats when you were a little bit younger than this. And then Doddie went off and had his big career. But have you got any memories of Doddie when you were playing in the same team, in the same squad as him?
I think a couple of the memories I have of guys like Doddie and Gary Armstrong and so on was, we were new to professional rugby, but they'd been the old school, where they'd been really old school, but then they'd went to Newcastle now that they'd come back to the Borders. So I always remember there'd been a real gulf in sort of what we knew compared with maybe what Gary and Gregor and Doddie and those boys knew. But, I remember them really taking us under their wing. Tony Gilbert, who was the coach, I just remember our first pre-season. And I think his sole purpose was to try and break us, probably mentally and physically, but more mentally. And I remember those senior guys like a Doddie and a Gary sort of understanding what was happening, how he was trying to, build a team spirit based on, some real hard work and determination. And those guys were huge. I can't remember exactly how many of us were for the first time fully professional. And well, when I say professional, we got paid money to train and play, but looking back, we probably weren't as professional as we should have been. And again, like guys like Doddie, and I always remember Doddie and Gary really has been a couple of pranksters and a couple of jokers that I always felt that fun element was there. Sometimes now you feel you need to create it to show the boys it's okay to have fun, but people like Gary and Doddie, they were excuse me, they were at the heart of everything when there was jokes going on or pranks or mucking around after training. Those two were never far away from from the action. So, and then on the field, I just remember him as a big, tall, gangly look that used to be able to win us the ball. And I say the game was changing to some real structure and the gym and so on. So it was a real period of change for the game. I think those boys really done amazingly well from going from amateurs into the sort of early professional to mid sort of time in the professional game. The players that come in now don't know any different, and the players that were just amateurs don't know any different. So I think guys like Doddie and Gary, Gregor had an amazing ability to transition through the different eras as it was over a short space of time, through those late 90s and early 2000s.
I remember one pre-season sort of activity that Tony had done for us or organised was we were split up into two teams, and we arrived at Riverside Jed Forest ground, and we all got changed into a rugby kit, and then we sort of jogged up the back up to Gary Armstrong's farm at the back there, and Gary had a lot of chickens at the time, and he had thousands of eggs, and we were expecting a proper a fizz session where we were doing hill sprints and all the rest, and Gary had about 3,000 or 4,000 eggs in his little woodland, and we basically had a big egg fight. But the likes of Gary and Doddie and all those knew which ones were the rotten ones, so they were crunching them over our heads and throwing them in the faces of the young boys. It was really good fun, and those types of experiences, you like you say, Clark, you take on with the rest of your life, and we sort of, looking back on it, you feel how honoured you are to be in the company of such impressive men and rugby players, and I think that's why we're all here today, and that's why everybody wants to try and raise a bit of money and come together as a rugby community to help people in times of need.
Well, Doddie's done an amazing job, hasn't he? I was back a couple of years ago and had a Borders reunion, and I arrived back on the Friday, and the reunion was on the Saturday. So all those characters were there, and it was awesome to see the real range, because the Borders, when you first played, Mark, that first time Borders went professional all the way through to, just after I played, and man, we had some laughs and stories that day. And again, Doddie, even in his current circumstance, was on great form. His sidekick, Gary Armstrong, who decided he couldn't get back on the bus without a shot of whiskey. You're right, that true, I guess that true rugby spirit, that true humility, true cheekiness that Border rugby players have, I think is something that has influenced a lot of us. And something I would never take for granted, those experiences, either in that team or Jed versus Melrose or Gala. It's some pretty cool memories.
It's that work hard, play hard ethic, isn't it? And that sort of rivalry, we talked about inter-club rivalry locally, but it was also across the border as well. I played for Spatria just on the right side of the border, and I can recall playing against Kelso at the time when the fabulous JJ, John Jeffrey, retired from international rugby, but still turning out for Kelso. And it was fantastic. We were playing Kelso down at Bower Park, and JJ was playing, and just full on 100%. He ran around the pitch, most of the time questioning our ethnicity and our parentage. But Malcolm Brown, who we talked to earlier, he would say JJ even then was 10 yards ahead of us. And I remember one particular incident. As a tight head prop, I was quite good at getting in the middle of a maul and getting my hands and my body around the ball, and I managed to do that at one stage. And I sort of looked over my right shoulder, and I could see John Jeffrey backing back like a bull, pawing the ground. and he charged in and got his right shoulder right under my ribs. And I thought, no, I'm not taking that. So I let go of the ball, which was probably his intention in the first place, and turned around to try and punch him. And as I did, my skipper, Mark Tank Richardson, grabbed my hand and said, I wouldn't if I were you. And for all that aggressiveness on that pitch, you know, watching JJ play, at the end of the game, he came into our changing room and he said, look, lads, I'm really sorry. I can't stay for a beer. I've got a function on tonight. I've got to leave, but thanks ever so much for the game. We'll see you again. And we just thought that was wonderful. You know, he didn't have to do that, but he made a point of coming in and saying goodbye. So, and that's rugby, isn't it? That's why we played the game at whatever level.
Good stories.
Yeah, it is. It's as you say, I can remember. Yeah, all your memories go back usually to on and off the field antics, you know, and didn't always have to even be alcohol, you know, just having fun together and yarning after games. And even now, as I say, going back to that Borders reunion, some of the guys you'd never played with, but you'd maybe played against as a young fella in your club teams, or you know, got to watch playing for the Borders or the South at the time. It's a special area, isn't it? That you can go back and catch up with people. It feels like you never left, even though, you know, I've been away for 12 years now, so it's a long time.
Well, I'll tell you what, one thing I was thinking when you're chatting, Clark, I was thinking, look, it's been amazing having a chat with you, and it'd be good when you're back in the UK to catch up on those sort of 10 years of beers that we've missed with you, flitting around the world and coaching at the highest level. Thank you very much for coming on today and giving us just a small insight into your experiences, and I think it's great that we're managing to export world-class coaches, whereas over the last sort of 20 or 30 years we've been importing a lot of coaches from New Zealand. And I think you're bucking the trend, which you did on the rugby pitch, and you're doing in the coaching world, and hopefully one day you can come back and if you want to coach one of the big international teams here as well. So thank you very much, and we'll catch up for a beer soon.